I knew I'd regret walking into that meeting the second I stepped into her lilac-scented office and saw the polished gold plate on her desk. Kendra Voss, VP of People and Culture. Culture my ass. The only culture Kendra had ever nurtured was a petri dish of nepotism, fed daily by her husband, the company's COO, and watered with fake smiles. She was perched behind her mahogany desk like a toddler in a booster seat, surrounded by pastel motivational prints and a Himalayan salt lamp she probably thought made her enlightened. She folded her hands like a therapist on television. "So, Harper," she began, syrupy sweet, "what did you want to discuss?" I came prepared. 7 years' worth of proof, literal and figurative. Hard numbers, cost savings I'd delivered, regulatory crises I'd prevented, late-night code patches I'd written myself at 2 a.m. that had kept our entire compliance platform from disintegrating during the last audit. I wasn't asking for the moon. I just wanted equity with a junior analyst, one who still confused a VPN with a GPS. She smiled the way rich people do when the waiter forgets to bring the lemon for their water. "It's not the right climate for raises, Harper." I didn't speak. I've learned silence unnerves people who expect you to grovel. Then came the kicker. She closed her leather notebook, nudged it aside like I was a coffee stain, and added, "Be thankful you still have a job." Something inside me didn't just break. It calcified. I nodded, slow and deliberate, like a doll on a dashboard. She thought she'd won something. She hadn't. She'd just handed me clarity. When I walked out of that office, I didn't cry or rant. I opened a new document on my laptop titled Contingencies, because what Kendra didn't know, and what would soon become the most expensive oversight of her career, was that half of Novatech's infrastructure ran on a system I'd built. Not proposed, not managed, built. From scratch. The compliance framework that kept our operations legal? Mine. The back-end logic powering vendor workflows across 4 states? Mine. The automation scripts that turned a week of manual audits into 30 minutes? All mine. And 2 years earlier, during one of her husband's strategic tax restructurings, I'd helped register that system under a temporary LLC for optimization. His idea. My paperwork. The agreement was simple. The LLC would remain in my name until the merger was finalized. "Just paperwork," he'd said. "Temporary. Guess what never got transferred?" As I watched my project access shrink and my name vanish from credits, I didn't panic. I documented, quietly, methodically, like a woman stacking dry wood for a fire, while everyone else played with snow. By the time they began parading my platform around as a team innovation, I'd already met with a lawyer. Set up the invoice system. The fuse was already lit. The first clue came when calendar invites disappeared. No more Thursday compliance syncs. No Monday product stand-ups. No Friday check-ins. I emailed operations. "Looks like I've been dropped from the stakeholder list. Mind re-adding me?" Silence. A week later, I asked in person. Julia from Ops blinked twice before saying, "I think Kendra's streamlining workflows." Streamlining. That was her word for erasing. The following Monday, my 2 direct reports were reassigned. No handover, no explanation. They were told I'd be focusing on back-end strategy. Back-end strategy, my ass. They'd cut off my arms to see how long I'd bleed quietly. Then came the golden child, Tanner. Fresh out of college, still thought Audit Trail was an actual hiking path. Suddenly, he was the rising star, regurgitating my documentation as new ideas. "We should build a proactive compliance log with dynamic triggers," he announced one meeting. Sounded familiar. I'd written that exact phrase in a proposal months ago. Kendra nodded like she was discovering fire. The rest of the room hummed along, oblivious. I wanted to scream dates, file names, git commits, but I didn't. I copied everything instead. Every credential, every contract I'd authored, every timestamp with my initials. All exported, encrypted, and backed up. Subject line, record, do not delete. Inside, I attached my original NDA, the LLC documents, even a photo of the sticky note her husband had signed. Harper retains ownership until transfer. They thought they were cutting me out. In truth, I was building the detonator. And when the blast came, it wouldn't make noise. It would make history. The first thing they took wasn't my title. It was visibility. Calendar invites vanished like someone had flipped a master switch. The Thursday compliance sync? Gone. Monday's product stand-up? Reassigned. Even the Friday wrap-up with legal evaporated without so much as a thanks for your time. At first, I thought it was a clerical glitch. Maybe I'd reshuffled access groups. I pinged Julia from operations again, polite as ever. Hey, looks like I'm missing from the compliance sync. Can you check permissions? No response. Not even a Slack emoji. A week later, I stopped by her desk. She looked up like she'd seen a ghost. Oh, Kendra's streamlining, she murmured. Talk to her. Streamlining. There was that word again. Kendra's euphemism for slow erasure. By Monday morning, both of my analysts, Marin and Luke, were gone. Reassigned, no exit chat, no handover, just clean cuts like limbs surgically removed. You'll be focusing on high-level back-end strategy now, the memo said. Back-end strategy, my ass. They wanted me isolated. No team, no witnesses, no support. And in their place came Tanner. Tanner, the intern who once asked if Audit Trail was a walking path. Tanner, who printed out Google results as sources. Tanner, who once forwarded me my own email with the subject line, "Thought you'd find this interesting." Now he was associate lead, compliance innovation. In the first meeting, I watched him lead. He parroted my work like a karaoke performer singing my song out of tune. "What if," he said, "we automated the compliance triggers based on workflow tiers?" I nearly choked on my coffee. That was my proposal, word for word, buried in a doc I'd written 8 months ago. Kendra nodded thoughtfully. "Brilliant thinking, Tanner. Let's explore that." Across the table, a chorus of nods followed, the synchronized rhythm of corporate groupthink. Every instinct screamed at me to stand up, to lay down evidence like cards at a poker table. File names, version logs, commit timestamps. But I didn't. I just smiled and started copying. Every document I'd written. Every Slack thread where I'd fixed what entire departments couldn't. Every server commit tagged HRB for Harper R. Bell. I exported everything to a private encrypted drive, double-backed it, then sent a copy to my personal email with one subject line. Record. Do not delete. Attached were the original LLC registration forms, my NDA, and that golden sticky note. His handwriting, his initials, his casual little promise. Harper keeps the LLC until transfer. MV stood for Mark Voss, Kendra's husband and the company's COO. The irony burned like whiskey. They thought they were trimming non-essential roles. But I wasn't a role. I was a system. And systems remember everything. Every time I passed Kendra in the hallway, she'd beam at me with that Stepford smile. "Harper, how's the new headspace without so many meetings?" "Quiet," I said. "Productive." She giggled like I'd complimented her perfume. By then, my anger had gone cold, clean, mathematical. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was writing protocols. The email that arrived next was titled, "Seedling Initiative. Let's grow together." That's when I knew they'd officially lost the plot. According to the attached PowerPoint, Novatech's leadership had decided what the company needed wasn't better infrastructure or improved retention. It was synergy reviews. We'd now be scored quarterly on collaborative optimism and warmth cultivation. Apparently, 7 years of regulatory excellence and 6 avoided fines weren't worth much if I didn't sprinkle enough exclamation points in Slack. My review summary came from Kendra herself. Harper is highly competent but can appear detached. We'd love to see more playful energy in her day-to-day contributions. Playful energy? Lady, I'm one compliance glitch away from setting this building on fire with a USB cable, but sure, let me work on my vibes. 2 days later, I discovered I couldn't access the vendor compliance log. The system returned. Permission denied. I refreshed. Tried again. Same thing. Then an intern pinged me. Hey, do you know why the vendor compliance log is blank? Of course, it was blank. That system was me. I didn't reply. I just opened my contingency spreadsheet, created a new row titled Control Point 1, Unauthorized Lockout, logged the timestamp, and saved it. Because every failure they caused was now part of my evidence. Every oversight was ammunition, and I was building a quiet arsenal under their noses. From that day on, I treated every glitch like a breadcrumb on the path to their downfall. Every time a sync failed, every time the system lagged because someone confused a hard refresh with delete forever, I logged it. I opened a new file titled Legacy System Dependencies. Underneath, I began listing every module, every trigger, every framework I had authored, patched, or rescued. Compliance Sync Module. Authored by H.R. Bell, 2018. Vendor Logic Tree. Rebuilt by H.R. Bell, 2019. Audit Response Parser. Written by H.R. Bell, 2020. Post-Merger API. Patch. Deployed by H.R. Bell, 21. Line by line, I recorded my digital fingerprints. Evidence that my code wasn't just work, it was ownership. At work, I became the ghost in the machine. I smiled when spoken to. I nodded through meetings. I shared nothing I didn't have to. Every request went through the slow drip of, "I'll look into it." They thought they'd reduced me to a placeholder. But I was observing the architecture crumble in real time. Kendra strutted through the office in her cream blazer, clutching a mug that said, "Good vibes only." She stopped by my cubicle one afternoon, leaning in like a reality TV life coach. "Harper, we'd love for you to join the meditation lunch next week," she chirped. "It's all about breathing together as a team. I'm allergic to gluten-free enlightenment," I said flatly. She laughed, thought I was joking. I wasn't. 2 days later, an all-hands email hit everyone's inbox. Project Everest, Platform Refactor Initiative. In corporate dialect, that meant, "We're going to rebuild the system you created without you." The memo gushed about cross-department collaboration, fresh eyes, and a new era of synergy. Tanner was listed as the technical lead. Good luck, kid. I hoped he brought floaties. He was diving into code older than his diploma. But while they were busy planning their renaissance, I was planning my resurrection. I'd already spoken with someone who actually mattered. My lawyer. A quiet man named Miles Reiner, the kind who didn't flinch at NDAs or corporate ghosts. He'd looked over the LLC papers I'd filed 2 years earlier with Mark Voss. His eyes had lit up. "You realize," he said, "this LLC still lists you as the exclusive owner of the Compliance Framework license. No transfer ever filed." I nodded. "I realize. Then technically, Harper, they're using your tech without a valid contract." Music to my ears. While they prepared their synergy slides, I was preparing a legal symphony. Our next meeting wasn't glamorous. No wine, no celebration. Just a beige conference room, paper coffee cups, and a stack of documents labeled Regulatory Platform Entity Flow. The director, Elliot Rhodes, Mark Voss's right-hand man and king of half-truths, leaned over the table with the charm of a used car salesman in a tailored suit. "To clean up the books before next quarter's audit," he said, "we'll need to temporarily move the compliance platform into an external shell company." "Just an accounting thing." "External shell?" I asked, eyebrow raised. "Just paperwork. You'll still manage it?" "We'll transfer ownership back after the merger. Totally routine. Back then, I believed him. Or maybe I believed that he needed me too much to screw me. He even made it sound flattering. We want you in charge of the system, Harper. You're the only one who truly understands it. So I agreed, but with one caveat. The LLC stays in my name until the transfer is filed. Period. Elliot smiled. Of course. Let's put that in writing. He did. On letterhead, with signatures. His blue Montblanc pen beside my cheap Pilot G2. We both signed, and for extra clarity, I stuck a post-it on the front. Temporary hold. Harper retains ownership until transfer. He chuckled, scrawled his initials under the note. Fair enough. I'll owe you for this one. He had no idea how right he was. Flash forward 2 years. By the time Kendra was hosting mindfulness huddles and Tanner was plagiarizing my legacy code, I'd nearly forgotten about that agreement. Until one late night, digging through an old drawer for a phone charger, I found it, folded neatly between expired granola bars and old USB drives. The signatures were still crisp. My name, his name, and that faded sticky note, the ink barely visible but still legible. Temporary hold. Harper retains ownership until transfer. My heart kicked once, hard, because Elliot never filed the transfer. The LLC still existed. No dissolution, no reassignment, no change of ownership. They had built an empire on top of my system, my property, without realizing the foundation legally belonged to me. I scanned the document, uploaded it to my encrypted drive, and made 3 certified copies. Then I whispered to myself, almost laughing. They built their castle on borrowed ground, and tomorrow, I was going to send them the bill. The next morning, I sat on my balcony with a mug of coffee that had gone cold twice. The city below hummed with commuters chasing meetings that didn't matter. Meanwhile, the agreement I'd just rediscovered sat open on my laptop screen, glowing like a loaded weapon. Elliot Rhodes and Mark Voss had both signed it. My signature. Their signatures. Notarized, filed with the Secretary of State. And that post-it, still attached in the scanned copy. Temporary hold. Harper retains ownership until transfer. Only there had been no transfer. No filing. No follow-up. They'd built Novatech's entire expansion on a platform that legally belonged to me. I leaned back, stared at the screen, and felt something sharp and electric bloom in my chest. Not anger anymore. Clarity. The kind that hums quietly when the universe finally flips the right switch. They thought I was invisible. Turns out, I was the infrastructure. That same week, a cheerful email popped into my inbox. Subject, rocketing toward expansion. Let's make magic happen. Inside, Elliot had forwarded a bullet point brief about Novatech's upcoming RegTech expansion project. The board would be voting that Friday. The plan? Build their new product line entirely on the compliance system I'd created, the one they'd spent 6 months trying to cut me out of. At the bottom of the email was a single line. Harper, can you prepare the internal policy document by Wednesday? The usual compliance ladders and risk matrices. Thanks. Oh, sure, I thought. Let me gift wrap the skeleton key to my own system and hand it to the people who erased my name from their slides. Still, I wrote it carefully, every clause precise, every definition airtight. I embedded cross-references only I could trace, and then I saved it to the shared drive without my name on the metadata. 3 days later, I checked the final board packet. My document was in there, word for word. Only under contributing authors, it now said. Internal Ops Team. Not even a courtesy initial. I didn't reply, didn't slam my keyboard. I just stared at the PDF like a coroner reading a death certificate, because I knew what was next. That night, I met with Miles again. His office smelled faintly of paper and victory. The NDA was already signed, the chamomile tea already poured. I think it's time, I told him. He nodded once. Flat rate or usage-based licensing? Usage, I said, and I want it to compound. We drafted the agreement line by line. My LLC, HR Bell Systems LLC, would become a formal licensing entity. Any commercial deployment of my compliance framework would incur a usage fee of $50,000 per day, backdated to the moment of launch. Clause 7.2 defined the commercial trigger. Clause 9.4 outlined breach penalties. Clause 11 confirmed no license had ever been transferred, and Clause 12 added teeth. Continued use of proprietary systems without contractual acknowledgement shall constitute willful infringement, subject to statutory damages and injunctive relief. By midnight, both of us had initialed every page. Miles notarized the signatures and sealed 2 envelopes. One went into a safe deposit box. The other was scheduled for delivery to Novatech's legal department, Friday morning, 9:03 a.m., 3 minutes after the board meeting began. Because I knew something they didn't. Legal never joins a meeting until something's already on fire. When I left the office that night, the city air felt cleaner than it had in months. I wasn't walking out defeated anymore. I was walking toward impact. The next morning, at precisely 7:43 a.m., I filed the LLC amendment online. The business purpose changed from temporary tax structure to technology licensing entity. Enterprise Regulatory Systems. The state confirmation pinged my inbox a minute later. One small notification. One very big gun cocked and ready. Then came the fun part. Uploading the final licensing agreement to the LLC's secure portal. Usage fee, $50,000 day. Trigger, commercial deployment without active contract. Breach penalty, immediate cease and desist enforceable by civil injunction. No drama, no noise. Just ownership, on paper, on record, on the same servers their empire depended on. I drafted the invoice next. Clean, simple, professional. Recipient, Novatech Legal Department. Subject line, confidential. Immediate review required. The body contained one sentence. Ongoing commercial use of the HR Bell regulatory platform V2.3 Plus is subject to contractual terms per updated licensing policy, effective immediately. One invoice, one number, $50,000 day, and a polite note at the bottom. If you believe this invoice was sent in error, please refer to the original licensing agreement signed by E. Rhodes and M. Voss, dated March 7, 20XX. I scheduled it to send automatically, not for Tuesday, not Wednesday. Friday, 9:03 a.m. sharp, the same minute they'd be unveiling my system as their crown jewel. Friday arrived with the kind of deceptive calm that always precedes a storm. Kendra strutted through the office in what she probably called her boardroom playful dress. Lavender, of course, carrying her thermos labeled hustle juice like it was holy water. Tanner was already in the conference lounge, fidgeting in a blazer 2 sizes too big, probably borrowed from his dad. He cornered me by the coffee machine and said, "Big day, huh?" "Sure is," I answered, smiling like a woman who'd already seen the ending. The building buzzed with that artificial optimism executives feed on. Overpriced fruit platters, bottled sparkling water no one actually drinks, printed agendas that say vision more times than revenue. They were preparing for coronation. I was preparing for correction. At 9:03 a.m., my invoice left the safety of the drafts folder and entered their servers. The delivery confirmation pinged quietly in my inbox. 3 minutes later, the first ripple hit. Legal's chat channel flickered alive. I could see the notifications flash across my screen as messages poured into restricted threads. I didn't need to read them. I'd seen this movie before. By 10:12 a.m., the first internal message popped up in my notifications. Can someone confirm the system backbone we're deploying is the HR Bell platform? 5 minutes later, another. Did we ever finalize the license transfer from the original LLC? Can't locate any record. By 10:30, the glass doors to the legal conference room closed. No one came out. I didn't have to be in the board meeting to know the temperature had changed. I could feel it in the silence. Thick, heavy, electric. Somewhere behind that frosted glass, someone was asking the question they should have asked 2 years ago. Who owns the tech? And legal had the answer. At 11 a.m., and I was summoned to the boardroom, officially as documentation support. Translation, the note-taker they could ignore. I walked in, notebook in hand, and took a seat at the back, invisible as ever. Elliot Rhodes stood at the front, mid-pitch, laser pointer in hand. The numbers speak for themselves, he said, pacing with the swagger of a man who believed in his own legend. We're scaling faster than any competitor in our sector. Our proprietary compliance engine positions Novatech as an industry leader. He tapped the next slide. Our systems, our innovation, our future. My system, my innovation. My signature still sitting on an LLC they forgot existed. Kendra sat beside him, nodding at every sentence like a synchronized bobblehead. She leaned toward the CFO and whispered something about bonuses looking real cute if this clears. I tapped my pen softly against the table, counting the seconds. 9:03. Sent. 10:30. Legal locked in a room. 11:17. The sound of reality arriving. It started with a cough. Greg, the company's lead counsel, cleared his throat once. Not loud, but surgical. The kind of sound that slices through confidence. Elliot paused mid-sentence, forcing a smile. You good, Greg? Greg didn't smile back. Before we finalize, he said evenly, there's a licensing matter we need to address. The room froze. Oh, that? Elliot chuckled. Probably about the vendor clause. Already handled? Greg didn't blink. Who owns the compliance platform currently deployed in production? Elliot laughed again, smaller this time. We do, of course. It's internal IP, built right here. Joyce, sorry. Harper handled the early versions, but it's ours. Greg turned his laptop around, one tab open, a document glowing on the screen like judgment itself. HR Bell Systems, LLC. Licensing agreement. Dated. Signed. Notarized. And right beneath the header, owner of record, Harper R. Bell. Elliot's smirk faltered. He leaned closer, scanning the text, eyes darting like a man trying to unsee something. Kendra craned her neck beside him, squinting. Wait, isn't that just a placeholder? That's not... It's valid, Greg interrupted, calm as glass. Filed with the state. No record of transfer or dissolution. Silence expanded until it filled every inch of the boardroom. Elliot's face drained of color. He turned to me slowly, his lips parting like he wanted to form a denial but couldn't find the words. Kendra broke first. This can't be right. We've been using that system for years. Greg nodded. Without a valid license, yes, which means each day of commercial use constitutes breach under Section 9.4. Usage penalty, $50,000 per day. The CFO inhaled sharply. Someone at the table dropped a pen. Across the room, Elliot's voice cracked like old veneer. How long has this been in effect? Greg replied without looking up. Since the merger. March 7th, 20XX. Elliot's jaw flexed, then the smirk. That confident MBA-trained grin just died. No noise, no protest, just silence, the kind that doesn't breathe. It waits. Elliot just stood there, blinking at the screen as if the words might rearrange themselves out of existence. Greg closed the laptop with the slow finality of a judge lowering his gavel. Per counsel's recommendation, he said, the board should suspend any forward action on the expansion until this is resolved. The chair of the board, a silver-haired man who usually spoke only in cryptic metaphors about synergy and scalability, didn't even look confused this time. He looked tired. The way people look when they realize the truth has been sitting under their nose for 2 years wearing a name badge. Kendra's voice trembled. You can't just... I mean, Harper worked here. Doesn't that count for something? I tilted my head. Depends, I said softly. Do you mean legally or ethically? Her mouth opened, then closed. Nothing came out. Greg continued, sliding a folder across the polished oak table. Until the licensing matter is resolved, the company is in breach of contractual terms. Continued use could escalate liability. That was the sound of the floor dropping. No shouting, no accusations, just that awful stillness people make when they realize gravity still applies to them. Elliot sank into his chair, rubbing his temple. Greg, he muttered, this has to be fixable. Greg sighed, tone surgical. There are remedies, none inexpensive. The board chair exhaled through his nose and nodded once. Effective immediately, we suspend Project Everest. All development tied to the H.R. Bell framework ceases until further notice. Silence again. Someone's phone buzzed. No one dared check it. I sat perfectly still, hands folded, pulse steady. Not triumphant, just seen. After months of being erased, I had become the most undeniable person in the room. And the irony? They had done it to themselves. They'd stripped me of my team, my credits, my title. But not the one thing that mattered, the paper trail. The meeting adjourned 20 minutes later, though adjourned felt too gentle a word. It was more like a slow implosion. The board shuffled into the hallway, whispering into phones, faces pale. The CFO looked like someone had just told him gravity stopped working for money. I stayed seated. Kendra was the first to crack. This isn't fair, she hissed quietly. We were just following Mark's instructions. He handled the filings. You can't hold me responsible for... The board chair's assistant appeared beside her, like an executioner disguised in HR. Ms. Voss, could you step into the other conference room? Kendra blinked. Why? He handed her a sealed envelope. Your appointment was under Mark's authority, which is currently under review. Under review? Pending audit. Her face went pale. Wait, what does that mean? It means, he said, your role is being retired. Retired, not transferred, not restructured, just gone. Elliot didn't look up. He just stared at the table like it had betrayed him personally. When the door finally clicked shut behind Kendra, the chair turned toward me. Ms. Bell, he said quietly, we'd like to discuss a new contract structure, one that formalizes ongoing usage of your framework, properly this time. I nodded once. I'll review terms. He looked almost relieved. Almost. I stood, gathered my notebook, and turned to leave. No one stopped me. The room parted like an elevator door. Not out of respect, out of realization. For years, they'd treated silence like submission. But silence had just rewritten their future. I walked the long hallway back to my cubicle. That sad little beige corner where my nameplate still clung to the desk like a relic. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the original licensing agreement. Attached it to a blank email. To Legal Department. Subject, per updated terms. No body text, no explanation, just the contract. I hit send. Then I leaned back, watching the message vanish from my outbox, and finally exhaled. No smile, no fist pump. Because this wasn't revenge, it was reclamation. They had tried to erase the woman, but they'd built their empire on her signature. And now, every breath of that empire had a price tag.